Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new Tesla update video. So today a fresh start to the week and a pretty big week at that. Wednesday, of course, at the FOMC meeting, which is a pretty big one actually. That can determine quite a bit as well moving forward for the next, honestly, easily the rest of the month. Yeah, so it's gonna be a pretty wild week, and I think it'll be pretty exciting. I do expect it to be fairly boring up until that event essentially happens on Wednesday. But nonetheless, we'll go over it as per usual, talk about what has happened, what we can expect moving forward as per usual, guys. You know what the drill is, you know what to do. If you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. It does help a lot. And of course, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Make your decisions, do your own research. The market is closing in not too much longer, but I don't think much more is going to happen from here. I'll be completely honest, which is why I'm recording it now. I'll be genuinely shocked if we don't close somewhere pretty much right around this level. So with that being said, Tesla looks like it will be closing around $183 per share, which is up about 1.7-ish or give or take percent. Compared to the market, Tesla is doing arguably in line / better than expected, which is good, but nothing completely out of the ordinary, right? It's not like substantially better. It's just maybe slightly better, if that at all, right? But all that being said, we talked about how on Friday, we talked about how after it did essentially collapse from down here. Let me see, Friday. What day was Friday? 17, right? Yeah, so let me double check that quickly. Yeah, so essentially we closed Friday right here, right? And then we started today, the Monday off with a massive green candle pretty much in the first hour of trading, and then we consolidated a tiny bit and then got collapsed back down, and now we've just essentially been going sideways for pretty much the remainder of the 4 or so hours of the trading day. So we talked about Friday how there's a decent chance that we will come up to most likely retest this breakdown, right? As usual, that's I've told you guys this many times, right? When we broke out of here, we came down, retested, and then we went up, try to push higher. We just really couldn't do it. Finally broke down out of this potential bear flag, and then from there we consolidated. It closed Friday off, and now today we essentially came up to once again retest this as well, right? It's a very common thing to do, guys. Whenever you break down out of a trend, it's extremely common. Doesn't mean it has to happen every time or else it'll be too obvious and too easy, but it's extremely common to at the very least come back to that level to retest that trend that you just broke out of, whether it's up or down, and then from there you move forward, right? Either you successfully bounce off and then the breakdown or break up, I guess, was successful, or it wasn't and it was a fake out, and then you go back into the channel. So in this case, for instance, Tesla easily could have, not easily, but definitely had the chance, in my opinion, to how it came down, went sideways and then came up, and then instead of going down like this, right, it easily could have went like this instead, and then came back into the channel, went back down like this, retested, and then went up, right? That definitely could have happened as well. So far it did not, and it's looking less and less likely the longer it takes. So just keep that in mind. That is pretty important to consider. So essentially we pretty much broke down, chilled, came up, retested successfully, which is not good for the bulls. And potentially really good for the bears. And now we've been consolidating, and most likely we will consolidate here, in my opinion, up until most likely the Wednesday FOMC meeting, which I do expect that to most likely happen. And I don't think too much will happen before that. I mean, you never know, though. Of course, something might happen. It is very possible. But that's essentially the main thing I'm seeing right now. As we move on to the 4-hour chart, right? Chart you can see on the daily, or the RSI. We aren't really forming anything too crazy, right? It is kind of arguably following in line. Keep in mind that these RSI end spots, if you will, are essentially where the candle closed, not where the candle has been, right? So on the 4-hour, because the candle closed here, that's essentially where it's showing it, right? You can technically make an argument that we're making a really tiny, inverted head and shoulders right here like this. You can make that argument. It's a very small one, and even if this plays out, it's nothing to really worry about. In my opinion, the thing to really truly worry about is, well, quite simple, right? I mean, let me go back to this. Right, it is quite simple. It's the fact that we are officially, in my opinion, in a kind of short to potentially medium term downtrend, right? Ever since this happened over here, right, the RSI, you can see, just completely collapsed and has been collapsing, even though Tesla was going sideways. And then Tesla finally starts to follow. And now what I really want to see is if we come back down to these levels right here, right, where does this RSI go? Most likely it will make arguably a higher low. But with that being said, I do also expect it to most likely have a bait. And I actually personally believe that this will actually go even lower, right? I personally believe that it will essentially do something like this from here. Most likely come down to somewhere around this area right here between 160 to 145. I've talked about that so many times as to why that is, but I'll touch on it one more time in case you're new or something like that, or you forgot. Very quickly, but once I finish this, this train of thought, if you will, right? But I do believe it'll come down over here, and then I think from there, what'll happen is this RSI most likely will go even lower, right? As the stock goes lower, which is not good for the bulls, then it's technically good for the bears. And then what I wouldn't be surprised is if essentially what Tesla does is from here, it either comes back down, so essentially it goes like this, maybe it goes like this, maybe it comes like this, and then once we get here, it'll do something like this, right? and they'll start making higher lows, and then that essentially starts creating that bullish divergence, even though Tesla, let's say the double bottom or something like that, just an example, right? But I'm expecting something like that to happen over time, which will of course take like, maybe a month or something like that, maybe even 2 months, maybe longer, maybe shorter, hard to say exactly the timing, but I do expect something like that to potentially happen. But that's just pure speculation, right? In terms of how it'll happen, I have no idea, but I do expect it to come down overall to that level. Now again, if you're wondering, where is this level coming from, why do I think it'll come down there? Well, first and foremost, we have a massive gap that I'm sure a lot of people have their eyeballs on, but most importantly is of course the classic Fibonacci retracement, right? Which I personally believe, again, assuming the bullish trend holds, because we did break above 200 up here, right? So that to me sets potentially a higher high, like swing high, right, over here, which is good because here we had 200, we came down, went up, came down to this level, came up back to 200, got rejected and came down, went up above 200, which was this arguable swing high, set up a higher high. And now essentially the bulls want to see a higher low. That's extremely important here in my opinion, right? As long as Tesla can set a higher low, which I think it will. I do think it's a higher probability it will than it won't, like maybe 70% chance it will, 30% it won't. But I do believe that Tesla will ultimately come down here, set up a higher low, which will come down to the 618 Fibonacci retracement. It's very possible that it only comes down to 160 to the 0.5. That is extremely possible, but I don't know. I really would expect it to come down somewhere at least between these two. It doesn't have to necessarily come down to this gap fill, come down exactly to 146, 145, but I would be surprised if it doesn't at the very least come somewhere maybe in between or something like that at the very least. You know what I mean, right? But that's essentially the main thing I am personally waiting for and watching out for. And if it does come down to this area, I will be most likely entering some, fairly aggressive cash secured puts, which is of course a bullish position, right? That is something I will personally be eyeballing, but I'm also being quite patient. I still have open bullish positions, so in case, which I'll talk about one more time as well, we do have a run up, which I still think is possible. I just think the chances are definitely decreasing slowly but surely. But I'll talk about, there is still, in my opinion, one more bullish scenario to play out potentially, which I'll talk about, so that maybe if Wednesday goes really well, I think that scenario gets unlocked essentially. But for the most part, I do believe that that's more or less how it's going to play out. Right now, if I remove this and we go back to, let's say, the Bollinger Band, and we open that bad boy up, you can see, let's take a look at the daily actually, right? You can see it is starting to converge a little bit as well. So, some consolidation happening, but I do expect a pretty decent move to happen after FOMC meeting on Wednesday. So essentially, I expect this news fest up until then, right? That's the most important thing to keep in mind. And the RSI on the daily still doesn't look like it's ready to have like a true rally yet. It's still kind of getting rejected under 50, right? It's still kind of getting rejected at the median line. If you go over to the 21 EMA, we're still getting rejected pretty much picture perfectly by the 21 EMA. Just really can't cross that. That is like a, it's almost like a trend indicator, if you will. Like if you're above it, the trend is most likely up. If you're below, the trend is most likely down. That's just, again, it's just one of many different things to look at, but it is like, again, the way you want to look at trading and, all these kind of things is kind of checking off, as many different things and seeing which, I guess, category it applies to, whether it's bearish or bullish, right? And which one has maybe more factors, kind of helping that case, if you will, right? It's pretty important to, check out overall, in my opinion, right? Of course, other than that, we have the 50 and the 100-day moving average that are crossing over, interestingly enough, which I think is actually arguably a good sign. That's arguably like not a bad sign, actually. I believe that it's arguably like a potentially bullish sign, right? So that's something else to consider. That's, a check mark, in my opinion, at least for the bulls. So, that's why it's extremely confusing. We're just in this very like pickles. Like we're in a pickle essentially, you know what I mean? There's so many factors that are really saying like there's bullish scenarios and there's bearish scenarios both playing out, right? Or can play out. So it's extremely difficult, right? This is one of those situations where you really just gotta wait until Wednesday to see what happens and, I guess really determine the direction it's going to go by essentially seeing it happen, right? But I want to talk about the final thing very quickly. So again, I personally believe there's a much higher chance to go down than up, again, down to this level, before actually truly making another trend back upwards, right? However, with that being said, I did talk about how there, in my opinion, is still one more bullish scenario to play out. And that's essentially going to be that from here, maybe we'll do something like, down all the way to, 170 again. But then I think from there, whether it's from here or 170 and then up, I do think there is a chance that we either do this or we just do this, right? But I do think that the bullish scenario, again, I think it's like a 20% chance most likely, but, it's something to still consider, which is why I still have some bullish positions open, though the rest is all cash, just in case a scenario plays out, because I don't want to completely miss it if it does. Essentially is running up all the way up here once again and setting up a massive double top, essentially, right? That is essentially what I would personally be seeing. So we run up from here, set up a massive double top, and then from there we see where it goes. But I definitely think that that is still a possibility. I am still definitely considering that, which is why, again, I have those bullish positions still open. Not like a huge part of my portfolio, of course, but enough to still at least matter somewhat, right? But I am much more in cash than I am in actual bullish positions or even bearish. I don't really take bearish positions. To me, a bearish position is being cash. But yeah, I definitely think there's a chance that we come up to all the way to here. We essentially set up a double top, right? Which, I mean, this picture will be a little bit weird, but it will be, it will look something like this, right? Where essentially you go up. So you go up something like this, you go down, you go up, you go down. You essentially create an M, right? That's like considered a double top. Could even be in theory a triple top, which is essentially what we had up here, right? Where we came up, had a triple top essentially. So you can go from here, went down, it came up, went up here, went down, one here, one down, right? And we essentially had a triple top right here, right? Top, 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 top. And then we have, of course, had the massive plummet. Again, I don't personally think this plummet will happen like this again here. It might, you never know, but I don't think it will. However, we are essentially setting up a similar pattern that we had here, once again over here. And if you look at it really closely, right, it's a shorter like time frame. It's a shorter time frame, like overall of this happening compared to up here. But if you look at it pretty closely, like if we let's just say remove the drawings for now, right, you can see very clearly that we essentially are playing it out in a kind of a similar fashion, right, where we came up right here, which was essentially right here, right, and then we came down and we kind of consolidated. We came down, kind of consolidated right here. Then we came back up. Okay, cool. Then we came back up, right, similar to this what we're having right here. And then we had a massive move down, which looked pretty bearish. Massive move down, which looks pretty bearish, and then we had a massive bounce up pretty much at the same level, which is that scenario I'm talking about, where we have essentially from here a massive move up to the same scenario or level, right? And then from there we have a massive collapse. I just personally think it'll happen like this. I don't think we'll have this part as well. I think we'll just get this part only right here, something of the sorts, right? But that's kind of something to consider. We are essentially playing out this scenario right here. Once again, it's looking awfully similar, you know what I mean? Which is also another reason as to why I'm also pretty, I guess, fairly open to the idea of still potentially rallying up one more time to around 200, maybe 210, maybe even as high as 215, but somewhere around that general level that we had all the way back here. And most likely set in like, several tops, like maybe a triple top, a double top, whatever you want to call it, all the way up here. And that I think will be extremely bearish. And from there, I think will be like probably one of the best shorts you can make on Tesla and make quite a lot of money if you're, good enough at holding it, let's just say, right? But that's essentially what I'm seeing, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, of course, as per usual, don't forget to hit that like button. But yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow as per usual. And I think Wednesday is going to be the big day. So, keep your pants on for that. Let's just say that. So that'll be interesting. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you tomorrow. Peace.